This is the OFN Today on the Our Football Network as we talk Minnesota Vikings football for the first time with Chris Thomason. He's with the St. Paul Pioneer Press in Minnesota. Chris, it's great to finally have an opportunity to talk football with you on the air, no less.
Oh, fantastic. Great to be on the air with you. I mean, nobody's talking to anybody in person these days, so everything's kind of virtual. So it's like old hat already for me.
And by the way, I have to give you much props for not only agreeing to be on the air with me on a Sunday night, but also you had to go through a lot just to get this going. So I really appreciate you taking your time to do that for me tonight.
Oh, no problem at all. Great to be on.
By the way, Chris, did I pronounce your name right? Last name right? Thomason?
You did it outstandingly.
Excellent. Are you a Minnesota native, Chris?
No, I'm sure I probably have some ancestors here due to my Scandinavian heritage that I don't even know about.
Wow.
So I was actually born in Sweden myself and apparently spoke fluent Swedish to the age of 2. But I grew up mostly in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but I've been in Minnesota for the past 7 years.
You look like you're from Minnesota.
I know. I fit right in with my last name.
You don't look like you're from New Mexico. I
Yeah.
mean, what's up with that? All right.
Well,
Well, look, we have great timing to get you on, too, because of the Ngakoue trade. So this wasn't like, hey, Ngakoue trade, let me get Chris on. We had talked about this for about a week, so really good timing. It's not official, but we're getting there. It's sort of unofficially official, right? We're what, 24, 48 hours away from this really becoming official?
yeah, I mean, I imagine it could become official very soon here. I mean, the sides have agreed that he will go to Minnesota. The exact 1 year salary he'll get, probably somewhere around 13 million. The franchise tag is 17.8 million, but just to get the heck out of Jacksonville, he's willing to take perhaps a 4 million plus cut. But yeah, unless something strange happens, everybody anticipates he'll be on the practice field late this week or so.
All right. And was this, if you look back over the last few weeks, even a few months with all the trade rumors, were you thinking that this was a distinct possibility, that this was a team that definitely was in the mix?
I was surprised, to be honest, because everything about the Vikings this year has kind of been saving money. They've made a number of moves to shave money off the salary cap. But then, by the same token, some of those moves, such as letting go of Xavier Rhodes and Linville Joseph and not re signing Everson Griffin, were related to those guys were all in their 30s. So, no doubt they're adding somebody else with a big salary, but the appeal here is that he is 5 months younger than Danielle Hunter. I mean, everybody talks about Danielle Hunter and how young he is, and he's has the most sacks in NFL history for anybody who's he hit 25 years old basically, and he hit 50 sacks. So Yannick is 5 months younger. So they're looking at this, even though it's only a 1 year deal. They certainly will hope to sign him to a long-term deal at the end of the season. But they're looking for these guys to be their 2 bookend star defensive ends for many years to come.
And you look at the secondary with some of the young players back there and some of the turnovers, as you just mentioned, that was going to be a position that you felt was maybe going to take some time for them to gel. So this just makes the defense and everything about you can call it the pass defense that much more evened out, and maybe even obviously a strength when you can just penetrate and harass the quarterback now like the Vikings look like they're going to be able to.
Yes, that's exactly correct. Head coach Mike Zimmer and Durante Jones, the defensive backs coach, both talked about that today. They have very young cornerbacks. The starting guys on the outside are 3-year veterans, Mike Hughes and Holton Hill, but they've never been regular starters. And then after that, you got a pair of rookies in Cameron Dantzler and Jeff Gladney. So Dantzler might be the outside cornerback and Hughes sliding into the nickel. But you're going to have a lot of young guys playing a lot. And both those coaches today talked about the importance of getting pressure on the quarterback to take some pressure off the young cornerbacks.
How is that competition going with Dantzler and Gladney? Because Gladney is the first round pick, Dantzler is the third round pick. So how do they fit back there, and who's winning that battle?
Well, indications are Dantzler seems to be a little bit ahead. I mean, they had a scrimmage at US Bank Stadium last Friday under game-like conditions, and it was all the first teamers pretty much going against each other. And in the base defense, it was Hughes and Hill as the outside cornerbacks. And then, as I stated, when they went to a nickel defense, Hughes went to the slot and Dantzler came in on the outside. So that certainly is a strong indication there that that's how they might just go. Granted, though, in practice, there have been times in which they've used Gladney in the slot and kept Hughes outside when they go to the nickel defense. But Dantzler's had a solid camp, and Gladney, he missed an early practice when he had some flaring up in his knee. He had meniscus surgery last February, so or last March. So I don't know if that has slowed his progress at all, but it looks like Dantzler is a little bit ahead of Gladney. But hey, if Aaron Rodgers comes out and torches somebody early on, that could certainly change in a hurry.
Okay, staying on the defense, new co-coordinators, including Mike's son Adam, who was the linebacker coach the last 6 years. The D-line coach the last 6 years, Andre Patterson, is also co-defensive coordinator. And we know Mike Zimmer is all about defense. So who's running the defense? Is it still Mike? And how is that working out between the three of them?
Yeah, I'm sure Zimmer will still call all the plays. I mean, he's called the plays his entire previous 6 years in Minnesota. He's come out a couple times and said, well, maybe I'll turn it over. He talked about turning it over to George Edwards. Well, what happened to George Edwards? He got let go after last season. So
Yeah.
I can't imagine he's going to give up the play calling that he thought about turning over to a guy that he just let go to two guys that have never been coordinators before. So Patterson and Adam Zimmer, I mean, certainly their opinions will be greatly valued, but I still kind of look at them more as position coaches and then Zimmer as the guy who runs the defense.
All right. And then on offense, with Stefanski gone, Gary Kubiak gets basically elevated as the man. He is going to be running the show on offense. How is the offense going to change under Kubiak?
Well, it's not going to change a lot because last year Gary Kubiak was an offensive advisor and was a key advisor to Kevin Stefanski, who was in his first full season as an offense coordinator. And Stefanski goes and becomes head coach at Cleveland. So even though Kirk Cousins has talked about this being his fifth offensive coordinator in 5 years, I don't think a tremendous amount is going to change at all. And that's one thing that a lot of the Vikings have talked about throughout training camp is just the importance of having that offensive continuity with no preseason games, no on-field spring drills, etc. And considering all the changes on defense, they point to the fact that having that continuity on offense is key.
Okay, now as far as the players, how much will this defense miss Michael Pierce in the middle?
Well, it depends who you listen to. I mean, Vikings coaches, namely, well, Mike Zimmer, Adam Zimmer, and Andre Patterson have been talking up Shamar Stephen like he's bound for the Hall of Fame or something. I mean, last year he was a starting three technique and was average at best at that position.
Yeah.
He's slide over and be nose tackle. Adam Zimmer came out and said he's as good as any nose tackle in the NFL, which was rather interesting.
Okay.
But yeah, I think, I mean, one reason I think they let go of Linville Joseph is they felt pretty confident of being able to land Michael Pierce in free agency. And that was kind of seemed to be a seamless move. They released Joseph, a two-time Pro Bowl selection, and brought in Mike Pierce, younger, up and coming guy. And now, boom, Pierce has opted out due to the coronavirus pandemic and his respiratory problems. So they're sliding Stefan over. And obviously, if he was that great, they would have just made him the nose
Yeah.
tackle from the get go,
Yeah.
last March. So the interior of the line is certainly going to be an issue. I mean, prior to the impending move with Jacksonville, it looked like Shamar Stephan would be the nose tackle and then Jaleel Johnson at three technique. But Afadi Odenigbo was slotted in to be the right defensive end, and he played some inside of three technique last season. So you wonder how much he might get moved around and also play some three technique, since he's certainly not going to be a starter anymore. And he's well aware of that, since after the deal became public knowledge today, Odenigbo tweeted, "Fool's gold."
Yep. You never know. I mean, you're talking about a seventh round draft pick. Matter of fact, you're talking about two seventh round draft picks. If you mentioned Steven too, back in 2014, this is actually, I mean, that position in the draft, late round, middle round, seems to have been, if you take a look at Spielman's career, Rick Spielman's career, that's where he's done probably as good as any other GM during his time as far as drafting. He hasn't hit as much at the top of the draft as you'd like, with a lot of home runs in the first round, but he's done a great job in the later rounds. And those are a couple of guys that definitely are a part of that. And obviously, especially on defense, it helps to have someone like a teacher like Mike Zimmer.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt of Spielman's success in late rounds. I've written about it plenty over the last couple of years. I mean, BC Johnson, in line to be a starting wide receiver, was a seventh round
That's
selection
right.
last
Yep.
year. And I mean, the guy he's replacing, Stephon Diggs, was a fifth round pick. And Adam Thielen, one of the top receivers the Vikings have had in recent years, undrafted free agent. So
Yeah.
yeah, they've certainly done well late in the draft. And then as far as early in the draft, well, things have varied at times.
Talk about the contract, because you just mentioned the cap situation with the Vikings. I'm sure that has a lot to do with the fact that they haven't been able to come to an agreement yet with Dalvin Cook. So, word is that the talks have broken down. Do you think that's going to be something more than likely that'll be the case for most of the season? And I can understand where the Vikings are coming from with their cap situation. But I also wonder whether or not how does Dalvin Cook feel about this? Here comes another player. All of a sudden, he winds up getting money right away. You know how these players are. I don't know what kind of a person or a teammate Dalvin Cook is. Do you think that is going to be an issue?
Well, it's an interesting situation, and the move with Jacksonville indicates the Vikings are certainly in a win now mentality and perhaps worry about what happens with the cap later. I mean, the cap is expected to go down significantly due to the pandemic, and the Vikings already have cap issues. So, this move here, in which they still have to clear, I talked to one guy today, one salary cap expert. He thinks they're going to have to clear about 5 million to create room and also to have enough money to operate when the season gets
Hmm.
underway. So, point one is this extra money they're taking on is going to make it more difficult to sign Dalvin to an extension, but they can only sign Yannick to a 1 year deal. They can't sign him to a long term deal until after the season. So, what if he just blows up? And I mean, the franchise tag, they can franchise him, but you only get one franchise tag.
Yeah.
So, what if they have to use the franchise tag on him and they haven't signed Cook? They've got to decide then between the two. And while Yannick can certainly say, "Yeah, I want to be here long term," what if he absolutely blows up and has a phenomenal season and realizes he can get crazy money on the open market. Or then by the same token, what if he's hurt all year or doesn't have a good season? Do you still give him huge money? So you only have one franchise tag to
Yep.
use. I mean, their perfect scenario is they sign Unique to a long-term deal, and if Cook hasn't signed a long-term deal, they just no-brainer franchise him. But that will be definitely worth watching there. And there's also Anthony Harris, who would be in line for a second franchise tag, but that's going to be such a big number, 13.7 or 8, I think, that nobody thinks that they're going to put that tag on him.
Yeah, it sounds like there's gonna be at least one significant player on this roster, and you just mentioned the top 3 right there. One of those 3 players are not gonna be on the team in 2021, maybe even 2.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be hard unless we'll have to see what kind of year Anthony Harris has. He certainly, likes it here. They probably have the least amount of control over him because if all 3 guys are potential candidates for the franchise tag, I mean, it's a no-brainer that Harris is number 3 in that group.
And he was another undrafted kid, right?
Yeah, yeah, 2015.
Yeah.
Spent time in the practice squad and then all of a sudden got called up for a game against Arizona when they had all these injuries in the secondary, and pretty much went from the practice squad to playing in a nationally televised Thursday game at Arizona and played well, and then just gradually continued to get better. And Pro Football Focus had him as a number 1 ranked safety in the NFL last season.
All right, so let's talk about this offensive line, Chris. This has been probably I understand it probably. You're looking at the weak spot of the offense. Uh, Does it look like it's going to be any better this year?
Well, I talked to Mike Tice, who is a former Vikings head coach, but more known for being a long-time, highly respected offensive line coach. He doesn't think they'll be better than they were last year. I mean, he says they're middle of the pack at best and trending, toward number 20 or so among all NFL teams. What he was saying, and I had written about it, is that I mean, they're built for run blocking. They're a good run blocking team, and that's what they want to do with Dalvin Cook. But what happens when they get behind and they have to throw to catch up? That's where he has some concern from a Viking standpoint. And he points at Riley Reef, the left tackle, and said that he's really not a true left tackle. He
Yeah.
looks at him like a right tackle guy or even a guard. So that's the key. Yeah, if they can get the lead in games and grind the ball out, which is what they want to do, they'll be in good shape. If they got to pass and come from behind, it could get interesting because on paper, Josh Klein, their right guard, was certainly at least an average player last year, and they released him, which was rather surprising in a salary-related move last March. So they moved Pat Elflein from left guard to right guard to take over for Klein, and then now they've basically got a couple of journeymen competing to be left guard. As it turns out, it looks like Dakota Dozier, who's been mostly a reserve throughout his career, will probably be the starting left guard. So on paper, you can't say they're better, although Tice seems to think that Ezra Cleveland, the second round pick, who is a left tackle at Boise State, he thinks there's a good chance he could be the starting left guard before the season is over. So if he can quickly emerge,
Yes.
that could certainly help the line. But just looking at the who they have now, there's no reason to believe. I mean, Garrett Bradbury, the center, should be better than he was last year as a
Yep.
rookie. Overall, there's no reason to believe that the line would be better than it was last season. And I think Pro Football Focus had the Vikings number 19 overall as an offensive line in 2019.
And that's you can win a championship with an offensive line that's slightly below average. It's happened before, but that's why you need to have your quarterback step up, make the big plays at the right time. Obviously, you have a spectacular running back and Dalvin Cook in the backfield who just has to stay healthy. But Kirk Cousins finally kind of broke through that playoff barrier, got his playoff win. Then the next week they were out. But still, getting that playoff monkey off his back, especially with this organization, with the money, had to be real important. I was actually very surprised that the Vikings, as of last week, they were like 30 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. And everyone I was talking to on this show, wow, I mean, why wouldn't I want to take the Vikings at 30 to 1 to win the Super Bowl? I mean, that's where's the disrespect coming from the Vikings at 30 to 1? Now the odds will go down, I would assume, a little bit with Ngakwe there, but still, why do you think that the national, whether it's the media or the analysts, believe that the Vikings might have just been a 1 year wonder? Why do you think that they believe that they're going to struggle? Because I still think that they have enough talent to definitely be a playoff team.
Well, probably because it's an even numbered year. I mean, look at the trend the last couple of years. Vikings win the division in 2015 and surprise a lot of people. And won a playoff game if Blair Walsh doesn't shank it left. And then there's high hopes. 2016 they slipped 8-8. Okay, people have given up on them. 2017 they make it all the way to the NFC Championship game. Then they acquire Kirk Cousins. Everybody's talking Super Bowl. Well, 2018 they go to 8-7-1. And last year, a lot of people, weren't that high in them, but 10-6 wild card, get a playoff win. So, but now it's an even numbered year. So the key is for consistency, but forgetting if it's even numbered year, odd numbered year, or whatever. I mean, I think you still have to look at the defense. I mean, they lost basically 5 key players, 4 starters, and then nickelback. I know they've just got a key acquisition from Jacksonville, but that's still a pretty darn good, a pretty darn young secondary they have. And just look at the schedule. I mean, it's just a murderer's row of quarterbacks they face. I mean, in addition to guys in the division, Rodgers twice, Stafford twice. You've got Tom Brady in the schedule,
Yep.
Russell Wilson, John Watson, Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan. I mean, the list, Philip Rivers, the list never ends. I mean, if you look at their schedule, I mean, it's basically the Hall of Fame of quarterbacks is coming through this year.
All right. Now there were a ton of draft picks that the Vikings obtained this year. If there was a team that might have been affected the most because of the pandemic and the lack of time for these young kids to get out there and play, maybe it was the Vikings, because all the young players, not only that they drafted, but the amount of players that they really feel must contribute and take over for some of those veterans that they let go. Uh, from what you've seen and heard so far, out of that long list, whether it's a draft or an undrafted player, rookie, give me a couple of players that might have so far been standing out.
Well, first of all, let me state that there's good and there's bad. I mean, you might say that it's a bad time to have a lot of rookies due to the pandemic, no on field spring drills, no preseason games. But then on the other end of the coin, they had 15 draft picks. So that maybe helps the odds in their
Percentages,
favor.
yeah, I like it.
You got a lot more guys who could break through. So maybe it is a good year to have lots of rookies. So yeah,
Sounds like
it's
you're a
hard.
glass is half full kind of guy, Chris.
Well, no, I'm just saying there's two ways
No,
to look at
that's
it.
a
I'm
good
not,
way of looking at it. I agree with you.
yeah, but I mean, Justin Jefferson, from all indications, has had a good training camp. He'll be the slot receiver, number 3 receiver. It looks like we've touched upon Cameron Dantzler. He was he's been a pleasant surprise as a 3rd round pick. I talked to Terrell Buckley before training camp started. He's the former NFL cornerback, and he was cornerbacks coach at Mississippi State. He's now at Mississippi, and he said that Dantzler was a steal in the draft, and he'll be a day one starter. And what Buckley said is starting to look pretty,
Yep.
darn close to true. I mean, he may not technically be a starter, but if you're one of the 3 top cornerbacks and they use the nickel 75% of the time, you're as good as a starter. And after that, though, Ezra Cleveland doesn't look like he's going to be an early contributor, but we'll see what happens as he gains more experience. And Jeff Gladney, the other first-round pick after Jefferson, he's kind of the wild card. I mean, Danzler might be ahead of him, but Mike Zimmer is fond of saying you can never have too many cornerbacks, with injuries and what have you. So he could find himself thrown in the fire, and then we'll have to see how he does.
What about the running back situation if Dalvin Cook, and he has missed time over his career, as we all know. So if he were to miss time, Madison was the third rounder last year. Boone has looked pretty good at times when he's been given an opportunity. Who's the true number two? And right now, is this is all about Dalvin Cook though? I mean, he's going to get a ton of touches this year, isn't he?
That's interesting that you said that because I was talking to someone. First of all, Alexander Madison is a very good backup running back. I was talking to the notable former Viking Chuck Foreman recently, and he came out and said he believes the Vikings have the best 1-2 combo at running back in the entire
Hmm.
NFL. I mean, we all know what Dalvin Cook can do, but Alexander Madison, coming out of the third round from Boise State, had a strong rookie season and looked good, both filling in for Cook at times and when they alternated. And, no preseason games and they've been very easy on Cook in practice. They don't want to wear him out and that sort of thing because they know how important he is to the team. So it'll be interesting to see how many carries Cook gets at the start of the season. I would not be surprised if he maybe doesn't get as many carries as you might think because they have Madison, and the last thing they want to do is throw Cook out there with no preseason games, no on-field spring drills.
Sure.
Sure. Hasn't gotten in a groove yet, and wear him out early, and he gets hurt. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them rotate those guys plenty early in the season.
Is Thielen okay? Is there any sign that the injuries from last year are going to be an issue again this year?
No signs at all. Looks like the hamstring is fully healed. He's been looking really good in practice and in the scrimmage last Friday. Although a cynic might suggest, well, he was going against the Vikings as cornerbacks, so it's really hard to say from that standpoint. And obviously, things could be different. I mean, for years he's always had defenses keeping things honest by paying so much attention to Stephon
Yep.
Diggs, and he no longer Diggs on that other side. So it's going to be interesting to see how much Thielen gets doubled and how much defenses say, BC Johnson or Justin Jefferson, you guys try to beat us.
All right, a couple more before I let you go, Chris. Special teams, the kicking game has been an issue for several years, but Bailey kind of surprised last year by having a pretty good season, even 3 of 3 from 50 plus. So maybe that's even more than a pretty good season. Colquitt seemed to have a good year as well. He's been around a while. But as far as the special teams, the issue seemed to be in the return game. Didn't get much there. So do they have an answer as far as any new returners this year competing for that spot? And are they looking kind of promising in the kicking game based on what happened last year?
Yeah, the punt return game last year was a disaster. They had let Marcus Sherrills go, who in his prime was one of the league's better punt returners, but has since shown age. He had a couple stints with them after they let him go, bringing him back, but he couldn't do much. He looked like a shell of his former self. And Chad Beebe tried it for a while, and he muffed a few punts and got injured. Mike Hughes tried it for a while. I mean, it was a revolving door of punt returns. So that is the key. They drafted KJ Osborne, wide receiver from Miami, in the fifth round, pretty much to potentially be their punt returner.
Okay.
They won't say yet that he is going to be the guy. I mean, he got plenty of work in the scrimmage at US Bank Stadium last week, but one reason for that was they wanted to throw him out in game-like situations with no preseason games. So, Chad Beebe's still getting work there. I would imagine that KJ Osborne is probably the leading candidate to eventually have the job, but unless they deem as a rookie that he's just not ready for it yet. And Mir Abdullah has been the kickoff returner for the last couple of years and has been above average. He hasn't wowed anybody with any super long returns, but hasn't embarrassed himself. And like I said, has been above average at the job.
Okay. And closing out, what about the division? What do you think about it? Of course, with Aaron Rodgers, you know what you got there. I can't imagine the Packers are going to have the success that they had winning as many games as they did last year. That's just not going to happen. The Bears went from, wow, they're on the rise to a complete disaster. So it's all about, I mean, do you think Trubisky's going to start or Foles?
Wow. I can't even take that one. So yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be. Let's put it this way: I wouldn't be surprised if Foles does start.
Yeah,
I mean, they brought John DeFilippo, who's the offensive coordinator a couple of years ago for the Vikings before getting fired late in the season, and he was the quarterbacks coach when Foles won the Super Bowl. So they certainly brought him in for a reason. And if he has a vote, you might know who he's voting for. So if I had to bet, I'd say Foles, but I certainly have no
sure,
inside
sure.
knowledge.
And Detroit actually is a team that I'm interested in. They looked real good last year early on when Stafford was healthy. He gets hurt. They can't win any games, but they were very competitive, and it's a must-win situation for them this year with the GM, with the head coach. But they got to keep Stafford healthy, just like any team. Like Minnesota's got to keep Cousins healthy. But Detroit could be, I think they could be a surprise team this year.
We've been saying that for a couple of years, so when I see it. But I think I still like the Packers in the division. I
Okay.
think with having a seasoned quarterback like Rodgers coming in, and it's probably an advantage that they get the Vikings and their young secondary on the road in week one because if there's and plus with these the new defensive end Yannick will be adjusting to new surroundings. So if there's a good time for the Packers to try to steal one from the Vikings, it might be in game one, and then of course they'll have them at their place later, and those games could be the ones that decide
And
the
this might
division.
be it for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay this year. This could be it. I mean, the signs are pointing like that, and I'm sure Minnesota fans will be happy to see him gone outside the division.
Yeah, Mike Zimmer's already wants him out
Yeah.
now. He said that.
All right, Chris, I appreciate it. Again, I really do. It's a Sunday night, and I know it took a while to get hooked up here, but I really do appreciate it. Hopefully, we'll get an opportunity to talk to you a few times during the season as well. At Chris Thomason, that's that's your Twitter handle, and the St. Paul Pioneer Press. They can just Google your name, go to the website, and read everything about the Vikings that way. Correct?
You got
Chris,
it.
thank you very much. We'll talk to you during the season.
Thank you so much.